All right, looks like we have now gone live on YouTube. Time is 6:05 on November 10th, 2020. Welcome, everyone. We have the Cultural Tourism Promotion Advisory Board meeting for November 10th. So it looks like got a quorum, so we'll go ahead and start with the meeting. The roll of calling to order and doing the roll call. Snyder, chair.
Here.
Rita Song is sick today, so she's not here. Jonathan Baker.
Yes, here.
Good. Galen McAllister.
Here.
Elaine Navarro.
Here.
Laura Tessler.
Present.
Ryan Gale. Ryan.
Ryan, you're on mute, dude.
Ryan's here, but he's still muted. Maybe having technical difficulties. Omar Alvarado, I have not seen just yet, so he's absent so far. Hopefully he'll join us shortly. And, Felipe Gonzalez.
Here.
Awesome. So we have seven out of 9.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Just first item of action is to get approval for today's agenda and the meeting minutes from our special meeting on the 27th that we had with the Moss Adams folks. Do we have a motion and a second, and then any comments?
I'll move to approve.
Galen.
I'll second. It's Felipe.
Seconded by Felipe.
All right. Any comments regarding either the agenda or the minutes from our 27th meeting?
I have a question, Chris, Scott. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Are we going to have an opportunity, facility operators, to ask questions on the grant applications? I thought we might have an opportunity today to do that. I don't see it on the agenda, though.
We'll hold that till after item number 5 when we get to the informational stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So we have a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Hearing no comments, we'll move for approval. All in favor of today's agenda and the minutes, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
I don't know if that was 7. Any opposed? Okay, hearing no nays, we'll assume it passes unanimously. And then we'll move to, Eunice, you have a meeting that starts at 6:30. Can we move Eunice to before the public testimony, just in case there's comments from public testimony, Chris?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. And Eunice is works with the city in the long range planning department.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you. So I'm Eunice Kim. Thank you for having me here. I know I'm not on the agenda, so I appreciate it. I'll be quick. I'm the long range planning manager for the city of Salem, and I'm managing the Our Salem Project. Have you all heard of it?
Yes.
A couple. So I was actually talking to Omar about this project over time, and I'm always brainstorming for new ways to reach out to people and to reach organizations about the project, and he suggested coming here Chris was gracious enough to allow me to come. So I just wanted to give kind of a brief overview of the project and kind of where it is, and how you can participate if you'd like to. So the Salem Project, just as a quick overview, is really a multi-year project to update what's known as our comprehensive plan. So that's the kind of long-term plan that guides how we grow and develop as a community in the long term. Think 10, 20, 30 years. So it influences everything from the different types of housing and where it's allowed, businesses, where they're allowed, our impacts on the environment, natural resources, our transportation system. So it's kind of the big, broad framework for how growth occurs in the community. And this is really our opportunity in updating the comprehensive plan to set the vision for that growth and to really proactively shape all of the changes that are probably coming as our population continues to grow. So I just wanted to share my screen and point you to where the website is, and I can talk a little bit more in depth about it. If I can get there. Can you see my screen? It's the Salem Project webpage.
Yes.
It's up.
Great, thank you. So I can put this in the chat, the website, but this is where you can find all the background information about it. We have been doing outreach in the community about since late last summer. We've been kind of out and about asking people what their priorities are for growth. What things do they like? What do they want to change? What are their priorities? And we've reached kind of a major milestone where we have something called a draft vision. And I will show you, you can find it on our webpage here. It's in English and it's in Spanish. And I just pulled up one of the pages. So the draft vision really focuses on high-level goals for growth. So there's goals around, and it's a draft. So there's draft goals around community engagement, economic development, housing, natural resources, transportation, community, and public facilities. So it's pretty big and broad, and the goals are pretty high level. But these are some of our community and public services goals. And so you'll see draft goals around community spaces and culture, increasing access to food, historic preservation. So again, it's very high level at this point. And so the vision kind of focuses on the goals, and it also focuses on a map, which is essentially our comprehensive plan map. So have you all heard about zoning, right? So like, what can you do with your property? What uses are allowed? The zoning code and the zoning map implement this higher level comprehensive plan map. And so we have put together an interactive map where you can see where different things are proposed for changes on this map. So if there's black hash lines, you can see that we're proposing a change, and you can click on it and see what those changes are. So just very high level. One of the things we've heard through all of our outreach is that the community wants to see more opportunities for mixed use development. So this is the idea that you could develop your property as commercial or office or residential, or you could do it all together. And so that's the pink color you see on this map. We've proposed mixed use as a designation, for example, on Commercial Street, on Lancaster, and along a lot of our corridors where there's frequent bus service. Another thing that we've heard is that the community wants to see a wider variety of housing in more places and more multifamily housing distributed across the community. So we don't just have apartments in one neighborhood versus another, but it's distributed across the community. Some of the things that Omar and I have talked about, and I think maybe are relevant to this group, is that we've talked about, how can we make sure downtown remains vibrant and it's really still a destination while we're looking at kind of commercial uses in other areas. And so if there are goals, I can stop sharing. And we do have a survey on our website right now that basically asks, if you look at our goals, are there any big items that are missing? And if you look at the map, you can drill down and look at your neighborhood. You can look at, your business or where you travel or anything and see, is this kind of what I want for the future? Or is there a difference that you'd like to see? And you can put that in the survey. You can also just call me or email me. That's fine as well. Because the survey is open until I think November 23rd. So there's still some time. But the idea is that we would bring all of this information with revisions based on everyone's input back to City Council. They've seen kind of the draft version, but we're going to bring it back to Council, I think in February. And we're going to ask them, do you agree with this general direction for the vision? And if so, ask them to kind of direct us to do the rest of the work. So there's going to be a lot of detailed policy work that needs to happen, work on our zoning code and our zoning map. And then eventually we hope to bring it all back through the adoption process, which is public hearings and all that, by the end of the year. So it does need to go through council. We will do much more outreach in the spring on those detailed policies. So if you're really interested in housing or you're really interested in, community services, we will have meetings specific on those topics where we can say, these are the ideas we've heard so far. What other ideas would you like to see in our plan? So I will share all that information once we have a schedule. But right now, again, we're focused on high-level goals and that high-level map. So I just want to make sure you all have heard of it and have an opportunity to participate if you'd like, and answer any questions you have. Hopefully that was short enough.
Eunice, just for the record, can you give us the website again? Is
Yeah,
it just
let me put that in.
oursalemproject.com or?
Yeah, there's no chat function. Yeah, it's cityofsalem.net/our-salem. And maybe I can email that all to Chris and he can send it out. Because then I can send the links to the survey, links to where you can find the interactive map more directly. I can do that.
I forwarded the email today with the link on that.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
So that went out to the board as well as any of the participants that are interested in that.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Eunice.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Eunice. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
All right, so we will go ahead and move to item 4, public testimony. This again is limited to 3 minutes per organization pertaining to items on the agenda. Any organizations that would like to participate in the public testimony?
Raise a hand or speak up. Oh, there's Sandra.
Scott, is this where we're discussing the grants that are under consideration, or are you going to have a separate section on grants on the TOT?
I believe, Chris, what did you just tell Michelle? Was that item after item 5 or with item 5?
Yeah, I was going to go with after item 5 if there was questions people have regarding completing the grant application.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Very good. So if there's no other questions or comments regarding public testimony, we'll go ahead and move to items requiring action. I think everybody got the letter from Tom phone, and Sally did a really good job of making the Elsinore's case for the adjustments to their capital improvement grant. Chris did forward the inquiry to City Attorney Atchison for clarification. And I think everybody got that email, but short answer, it is not considered a capital improvement because it is not a static item. It's something that's movable. So it would be considered a capital asset. And the determination definitely requires some interpretation by the board for consideration. Any questions by the advisory board members about the determination by the city attorney? Or I don't know if Elsinore is on the call, but are there any questions?
Sally is
I am here.
Okay, I'm on my phone this time. I don't have everybody's face on the computer screen.
Okay.
So,
So this is Galen. Is it, it appears that it hinges on how we define a depreciable asset. So Chris, can you scroll up to the budget, the proposed budget? And Sally, could you tell us, are all these things that you would depreciate?
This is what we had in our original request, but after our conversation at the last meeting, we were reducing it down to the freezer and the pizza oven and the electrical work.
So roughly $6,200.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm not sure, from an accounting standpoint, how that works with depreciation. To tell you.
right. Usually you depreciate things that you think are gonna last. I don't know if it's more than a year or a certain number of years, and then you divide off. You depreciate a chunk of it each year for the
Yes.
life of the item.
Yeah.
On that determination from the city attorney, and you had it highlighted before, Chris, the number 3, a capital asset must be necessary for the continued operation of the facility, while a capital improvement must increase the useful life of the facility or increase the types of uses for the building or structure upon which it is installed. So, again, the question is the pizza oven and freezer paramount to the Elsinore being able to operate? Or is it, is the theater going to be able to operate without those items from a fiduciary standpoint?
We can certainly continue to operate without those items. Our chances of operating in the black will definitely be increased by having those items. I think that's probably the best way to answer that question. So necessary or imperative, if you look at that last paragraph, I guess it's sort of a judgment call.
Right. That would be the judgment call for the board to make.
Fellow board members, any comments or opinions?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So to me, I mean, if it's not a capital asset, then I'm not really sure what we can do at this point. I mean, if it's by definition not a capital asset, then we can't fund it as a capital asset unless, we want to completely ignore those rules and fund it,
I think you're thinking the wrong thing. The capital improvement grant is what was originally applied for.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry.
The capital asset is because it's not, it's not a new sign or a new roof, or it's something that could be sold. If nobody buys the pizzas, they could decide to sell the oven because it's not working. It's not helping them. If that makes sense.
Okay, so just to clarify, we're not talking about the pizza oven as a capital asset, correct?
The city attorney is considering that, I believe, a capital asset. The only thing that I think could be considered a capital improvement would be the electrical work to accommodate the oven and the freezers.
Okay, so the pizza oven is okay as a capital asset, but not a capital improvement, just to clarify.
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, just want to double check.
Yeah, that is correct, because it's a depreciable asset that is affixed to a facility. So the electrical work, yeah, that's right. He's just saying, Dan Atchison is saying that the board, true attorney sense, he is slithering out from making the final decision, which is, he's giving us a decision on what he can make a decision on, which is referring back to council policy. Okay, that's what we pay the man to do. But he is turning out and saying to the top board, it is up to us to make the final definition at the end of the day, what we want to do in this matter. Okay. Can the theater operate without these items? Yes. Okay, yes, it can. But as Sally just so pointed out to us, and poignantly so, I might add, they probably cannot continue to operate in the black. So the question we are left to ask ourselves as board members is it in our benefit as board members to encourage a operating facility to operate in the black or in the red? So therefore, you must decide if this policy is a good policy to endorse because it allows the theater to operate in the black, which I would argue is a good policy because we do want the theater to operate in the black and not the red. That would be my argument for voting yes.
And I know that this is jumping ahead, but if we look at item 6A at the bottom, total resources less expenditures, last year at this time, there was $850,000 in the bank going into the winter, the slowest months of the year for the hotel business. This year, there's $372,000 in the bank. That's $477,000 less money to be able to fund operating grants, if there are any event grants, or any capital improvement grants that qualify. That's a significant amount less to have at our disposal for discretionary decisions. And so I'm ultimately going to be voting no, not because I'm not a huge supporter. I agree with you very much, Laura, that having all of our cultural heritage partners healthy and well is important. I hope that they can all weather the storm. I hope all the hotels can weather the storm because the fire victims are gone. I mean, they're all back in their homes or, close. And so until guests feel safe traveling or until the restrictions are lifted where people can meet in more than groups of 6, the likelihood that this is not going to turn in the next 6 to 9 months. And we will be through this entire fiscal year before we have a glimpse of seeing any uptick. And again, it's going to all be guest perspective or perception about safety. So I empathize. I wish I could just write blank checks to everybody, but I can't. And I think that we have to do the best that we possibly can, and make sure that there's going to be money for them to get money in next quarter for operating grants, because the trend. Again, I'm jumping way ahead, but we were 55% below last year in September, and so it's not pretty.
So can I ask a question on that, Chris? Have you looked at what we're doing against encumbrances? Like, at what point are we going to run out of money?
I have not delved in too much deeper than what we've already been doing. We've already made adjustments to how we pay the facility operators at 3/4 of the award amount. So that's helping. The actual amount going to Travel Salem, because of the fixed percentage rate, as the revenues go down, so does that contribution amount goes down. So that also helps offset the amount of money going out. So those things, and then of course events that aren't taking place, because these are reimbursement grants, then we're not having to pay out the money on those events either. So we're kind of skating by. We're trying to cash flow it as much as we can, and just taking a look. The month for October, the September TOT activities that were paid in October were kind of a big surprise in the sense that it brought us closer to what normal would be on that month normally. But that we all know is, as far as I know, actually, because we don't collect the data from the city standpoint. As far as I know, Scott would be able to clarify more that the majority of that activity was related to the fires and the individuals being dislocated from their normal homes and having to stay in hotels during the firestorm that we had in September.
Yeah, it was definitely related to air quality. We had a lot of guests from Silverton that couldn't, it was, the air quality was 400 or 500 times higher than it's supposed to be. Obviously the Gates, Lions, all those folks, they were displaced because their homes burned or there was nothing left of their community. But we had people from the coast coming over. We had people from Malala coming down. It was, Salem was the only safe place to stay. And because Eugene was on fire. I mean, it was just everything south of Eugene. It was just crazy how everybody was impacted. But again, it was a short-term thing, 2 weeks, and so that's what happened in 2 weeks. That positive TOT collection. But the people that are here with FEMA are tax exempt. They aren't contributing to the TPA for Salem. They aren't for Travel Salem. They aren't contributing, obviously, any TOT to the city or the state. And it's because they're a federal entity. And the people that are staying for more than 30 days become tax exempt from day one. So there may be some of that revenue that we collected in September that we ended up writing off in October because they eclipsed 30 days. So it is.
Do you claw that back after, if you've submitted your taxes, do you then ask for it back if they stay longer?
We don't ask for it back. We just pay what should be paid minus what we paid in September. So, but we have to document. It has to be documented. So we have to show any receipts that exceeded 30 days so that Chris doesn't come out and write us a ticket.
So there might be an adjustment to that. So, and do
Correct.
we pay the operators on a quarterly basis? When do we pay the operators next?
So we do pay the operators on a quarterly basis. We paid the first quarter for the July through September, and now we are currently in the second quarter, started on October 1st. So the next payment, as the reports come through, we're paying them at the end of November. So it'll be halfway between.
What's that total amount come out to, the quarterly payment?
Quarterly payment is $75,100.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions about the capital asset versus capital improvement or the Elsinore proposal? Okay, right now we have one board member in favor of the proposal and we have one board member in opposition. So it's going to be hard to get a motion and a second out of that.
Can you repeat the motion just one more time?
We don't have a motion yet.
Nobody's made a motion.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about what Chair Snyder just said. And, I also listened to a pretty extensive briefing about how the vaccine is going to roll out. There were some people from Pfizer today in a group I'm involved in talking about how that's going to roll out and what their prognosis is. And, do we assume that everything just sits and shutters up for 6 months? I mean, I guess that's what I'm kind of, you're nodding your head. I mean, Scott, I rely on you to, be the expert in these matters. I mean, I'm not a hoteler. I don't know these, but I'm kind of trying to unite this information and make sense of it. And I am totally respectful of your expertise in this matter. So I want to make a decision based on good financial information and not be, sobbing in a Kleenex making the decisions. So, that's why I'm listening to you.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely convinced quite yet.
No, and I appreciate that. I just, I wish I could look into a crystal ball as much as everybody. I'd buy different stocks. I'd buy lottery tickets with winning numbers, all that kind of stuff. But I have to be cautious, from an employment standpoint. I'm not going to, I hope that this vaccination flips a switch and people want to travel in January, if that's the truth. But, looking at the groups that the convention center has on the books, everybody's tentative. Nobody is they're signing a contract, but there's a COVID clause. So, if we don't feel comfortable, we can cancel with no penalty. And so I don't want to play with money that we can't have some assurance. And I'll feel a lot better once the governor says kids can go back to school, or, they actually start, lowering the restrictions on group sizes, and then ultimately the public is the driver, because they could say, hey, you could have 500 people, but if nobody feels safe, it doesn't matter how lenient the restrictions are. It's their temperament for actually going places. I took a call today. They're coming for their father's 90th birthday. They haven't traveled since March, but they're coming here in November for her dad's 90th birthday. So it's like, here's what we're doing to help make sure guests and staff are safe, and so it was a big deal. But it's just I that isn't an assurance that I think is very concrete, Laura.
Can I offer a split the baby motion?
Sure.
Yeah, Galen, lay it down.
So how about if we fund the electrical and the pizza oven? I think that's reasonable. I think if the Elsinore really believes it's going to work, they'll fund the rest, because it from their argument, it seemed to have a quick payback. And we do look like we have the cash right now, and we'll be able to still make our quarterly payments. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay, so we have a motion. Now, is that to fund the entire thing or 50% match?
Yeah, just a 50% match of the pizza oven and the electrical.
We can only do a 50% match of actuals for those.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Well, what do you, I think that's a good compromise.
Yeah, and so just to clarify on my end, so if we do the 50% match, based on the city's legal analysis, we would have legal permission to do so. It would be okay.
Yes.
And that the pizza oven meets the definition of a capital improvement.
Capital asset.
Not a capital improvement, a capital asset.
Because of asset, sorry, I get those mixed up. Yeah.
Galen, are you laying a motion on the table?
Yes,
You did.
that would be my motion.
I will second it.
Okay, any other discussion or comments? Okay, hearing none. All in favor of the motion to fund 50% of the pizza oven and the electrical at a proposed amount of $2,600 is 50% of the $5,200. Please say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
All opposed? I am against.
Motion
All right.
passes.
Is that 6-1?
Should be 7-1. Omar's there.
Oh, Omar's joined. Okay, all right. So, okay. All right, very good.
I was an
So-
aye also. Sorry. I'm having to read what you're saying after it's already said.
Okay. All right. So the motion passes 7-1 for the pizza oven and the electrical work to take place.
And I just
All
want
right.
to say that I totally, completely respect what you're saying, Chair Snyder. I mean, I totally, I do. And I respect you coming in here and saying, you know, we got to look at the money. And this is hard. This is hard for everybody. And I respect you saying that. And I do step back and think about the money. And I will continue to think about the money.
I appreciate that. And we don't have, I mean, it's lovely having unanimous decisions, but that you were on council. You didn't always have unanimous decisions on council.
Oh, no, there was many 6-1, my friend, and I was often the one.
Yeah.
Believe me.
So yeah, so no harm. I just, you know, it's a democracy, and so we will. I'm sure Chris will communicate with Tom and Sally so they know exactly what needs to be done. So,
Thank you
all right.
all.
Yeah. All right. So moving on. So grant application questions. Do we want to do that
Let's go ahead and do that
alphabetically
now.
or by organization or Sandra, since you were the first, or I guess, no, actually, Michelle was first. So Michelle, would you like to go first?
Sure, yes, thank you. So I have a question about the facility operators grant. In the past, the application, well, okay, let me start over. Trying to think about the best way to phrase this. Under the section where CTPAB funding goals, it's about, I don't know, 2 or 3 pages down. I don't know if you happen to have the application, Chris, handy.
I will go ahead and pull it up from the website right now.
First of all, just so that you know, for those of you who haven't looked at these applications before, these spaces are very tiny. It's a little challenging to put a lot in here. So while I really appreciate the scoring criteria, I think it's wonderful. I think it's great that you guys have done that because it puts everybody on the same page. Everyone's looking at the same stuff. And I think that's going to be really helpful for you when you look at these applications. But if you look at the application down, if you go down, Chris, to the CTPAB funding goals,
okay,
right there, number 2.
Mhm.
I remember in the past, and it says here that you have to check at least one. And the way it's phrased, you've got and or. But in the criteria that you guys have put forth, you said there's 9 points total that you can get, and you are giving 3 points for each one that you answer. So my question is, do we need to answer all 3 or just 1? In the past, I understood that it was only 1 or 2. Is that making sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think the scoring matrix was a nod to if you're meeting all 3 of the goals, you're going to get more points than if you just meet 1.
Correct. And that is not consistent with what's been said in the past. In the past, they've always said there's not one that's better than another. But what I'm hearing you say is that if we want to get the full amount of points, we need to meet all 3. Is that the way we are doing it now? Or I just want to know
I think that was the feeling on the, we tried to make it so you get more points for meeting, since those are the goals, that the people who can describe how they're going to meet each goal will get more points. So yeah, I think, certainly I want to have the other people on that committee weigh in.
And
Yeah.
Felipe was on the subcommittee, and who was the other board members?
Omar.
Omar, okay.
Yeah, I can
Yeah.
weigh in on this.
And I was too, so go ahead.
Yeah, so Galen
Oh.
is totally right. So that if you meet all three of those goals, then you would get more points than other operators. And that's kind of, we read it as those goals were all equally important in the application. So that's kind of why they're all each worth 3 points. But if you do all three, then you can get all 9 points.
And that's
Okay.
out of 100 total points, correct?
No, 25, right?
25.
25.
Okay, sorry. All right.
Yeah, so the application would prefer grants and projects that meet all three of those criteria.
Okay. Thank you. That was the only question I had.
Okay.
I believe Sandra was next.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. So my question is, I'd like to just clarify something. It can get really confusing sometimes as we wade through a year in different meetings. And I say this with all respect and with great appreciation to you all. In July, when we had our July meeting, there was a lot of talk about the need to pivot to virtual, and this was going to be the new normal. We all had to do that. And I had submitted a Salem Art Fair that we pivoted to virtual, and I was looking for marketing money specifically because we are obviously staff were on reduced hours. We'd lost revenue from Art Fair. We're struggling, and we had no budget for marketing. But we put it together for all the same reasons that Marie put together the modified program for Santa at the carousel. That item didn't get on the agenda under items requiring action. It wasn't really discussed, and it was, the idea was there's no money, we're not going to do any events in this next financial year. So it's a little confusing, and I'm really not trying to be adversarial here at all. But that was turned down, and the one I felt that for the effort we'd made to create this amazing interactive interface, and all that went on with 120 artists and all the images and videos, 60 plus videos and so on, that it really could have got out to the community better, but we just didn't have the cold hard cash to do that. We did the best we could on the resources we had. But I'd hoped to go to Irene at Travel Salem, and I actually reached out to her earlier on and said, I want to talk marketing. How do you market a virtual event? We've never done it before. But in the end, I just had to do what I could, and I couldn't actually follow through with many of the marketing ideas. So at the last meeting, suddenly there is money for flipping for pivoting an event to make it safer and accessible and to contribute to the continued. This is a 70-year-old event. Substantial identification by Salem. So it was surprising at the time that it didn't really get on the agenda. It wasn't properly discussed. It was sort of at the end as a sort of, all the other business had been done. And so how do we understand this going forward? Is there money for events? We're coming around to submit our event grants now. I think it just generates confusion, and I think that was a kind of confusion that Michelle had in relation to the Caboose project. Consistency is really helpful, and if you decide no, we're not, and it's consistent across the board, then okay, that it is what it is. But it's quite challenging not to quite understand what are the mechanisms behind. How do we go forward? How do we know what to do? Do we spend time on applications for things if we don't know if in fact there's even funds there? So if you could help clarify some of that, would be really excellent.
if I could respond to that, I think that's really thoughtful comment. And I'll tell you, we had some really good public feedback on another venue I was on today. And, you know, I'll apologize to you because I think a lot of us were caught quite flat-footed this year. And I think more than flat-footed because people are going to have to do business in an entirely new way. From the government, from nonprofit to everything else. And, you know, for a lot of people that have traditionally done public outreach and meetings and working with the public and teaching and all of this, people are used to do this in person. And it's a real digital revolution. So we're all going to have to think about doing things virtually. And I think this really caught us flat-footed. And I think people didn't know how to respond to it. I think a lot of us just feel kind of numb about what's happened, what's gonna happen. How do we plan for next year? You know, how are we going to conduct business in the future? You know, and that's not an excuse to, you know, not having, you know, good policy to, you know, give people good direction and how to, you know, how are we going to treat different events? But we really do need to think about virtual events and how we're going to give people grants and how we're going to move forward. And I don't even think we've begun to embrace how this is going to look like.
And Sandra, and I think Laura's comments are definitely right on. You know, I had an opportunity to meet with Michelle, Kathleen, and Gilbert House. Sorry.
Alicia.
Yes, thank you. Alicia. And just really hear how difficult I'm, you know, reiterate what Laura just said. Everybody's hurting, but there, you know, there's no faucet to turn on to nonprofits. It's difficult, and as a board, we need to definitely be attuned to that and empathetic to that, and you know, and not to rationalize, Sandra, but in July we had just come off the worst quarter we'd ever had in TOT. I mean, it's going back 15 years since it'd been that small of an amount of money collected in a quarter for that time of the year. And it was, the faucet got completely turned off. It wasn't a gradual, it was off. And not to rationalize a decision made in July versus a, you know, a feel-good decision made in late October about something that's in December, but it was, you know, everything was scheduled to take place in the summer, and there was no money or no prospect of money. And, you know, so not making, second guessing our decision because I voted for it. I amended, you know, we did a friendly amendment to the dollar amount, and trying to put the onus on the carousel to figure out how to come up with that other $2,500 to pay Santa. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be the fundraiser. It's just going to hopefully break even for her. But you know, it's just, we're learning as we go. And, you know, we're going to continue evolving. I mean, in my business, we've evolved since March 7th. It's just, you know, and you evolve or you die. So, so it's just, we're going to be better next month than we are this month. We'll be better in next quarter than we are this quarter. I mean, it's just going to continue to our hindsight's going to help us continue to make better decisions going forward. So, and I appreciate you bringing it forward because I think it does need to be publicly said that, you know, we were deer in the headlights this summer, and I was certainly probably one of the most pessimistic because I could see every call was, I need to cancel, I need to cancel, I need to cancel. Nobody was calling to make a reservation, and so it just was again trying to be fiduciary, you know, fiduciarily responsible. So I hope that helps to address the comment for all of our valued partners, as well as the other board, that, you know, we have a responsibility to speak our mind, you know, and that's the only way we can continue to learn as a group. And there's a lot of newer members, but we need you all to be sharing your perspective.
Chris, can I get a point of clarification? Do we vote to never pay for a virtual event, or do we ask for people to pitch us with what their pivot was?
There was a discussion on the pros and cons of the return on investment surrounding the virtual events versus in-person events. There was no formal decision aside from if the event's been canceled and won't be held, then we weren't going to fund those. And that's where the Salem Art Fair fell in. Is the cancellation of the art fair was made just right before the budget was being approved by City Council, and so with the information that we had at the time, all those cancellations were defunded from the grant process, including the Salem Art Fair.
Mm-hmm. So, and I think what's happened since then, which is great, and I love reading the reports of what each organization has done, is they've figured out how to still meet some of the taught goals without having in-person events or with having hybrid events. You know, so like Scott was saying, things have changed since then. And I wouldn't want people to think that we're a complete no to no events, but we're probably still going to compare it to what the top goals are. Are they meeting any of the goals?
Well, at that point in time, there was no, you know, if it's because of the discussion around the return on investment decision, at that point in time, there was no, the board did not want to go ahead and forward to fund anything that was a virtual event.
Mm-hmm. So ones that were hybrid, like the Santa event, my understanding is it's a hybrid. Mm. There's some in-person event.
So yeah, the Santa one is a hybrid one where they're actually going to have a Santa there that they're paying for, and they're going to allow people to come. But yeah, it's a special circumstance.
And I just add that the discussion at that meeting prior to the end of the meeting when it was brought up, there was a discussion about how nonprofits are going to have to pivot to virtual events. It was saying saying that virtual events are good, and I was sitting there saying, "Yeah, we've got one for you." And do you know that in terms, and this is part of why I wanted to get Travel Salem involved, that we had people come into that event from South Africa, from Britain, from Germany, from Russia. All over the world, Canada, Mexico, not huge numbers internationally, but the community, that was where the loss was, because this we were doing for the community, as is like, you know, we've done this for 70 years and we're not going to let something like that defeat the community's sort of signature event. And you know, so our loss was for the huge effort that was made to create that interactive platform, that we couldn't get it out to the community well enough and under the budget we had. But that's all then. And now going forward, I think the important thing for all of us operators is consistency and understanding what are the parameters, because all of this is writing proposals and all of that is part of what we do, but it does take time. So knowing what's not on the table and what is on the table is important, I think, for all of us.
Well said. And, you know, take note. And the other thing I think would be really helpful, I think, for, you know, myself as a board member and, you know, maybe for, you know, the community of, operators is, maybe have some training about putting on these virtual events. And I think we have I think Felipe and Omar, don't you do virtual events? Don't you have experience in these matters, if I remember correctly?
Yeah, I do. I do marketing and have a pretty good background on that stuff. So I don't know how it works to help out, but I can always let Chris know I'm available and here to answer questions.
Do you think, I myself would be interested in maybe a brief talk sometime to the board about, how this works or how it's set up or, that kind of thing. Like how are people successful doing it? Maybe how we could look at it differently when people come to us on proposals. Just a little education about it, like how the people who use it the best, how do they do it the best? How are they the most successful? Understanding how it works, in the marketing field would be really useful, I guess to me as a top board member. So, you know where I'm coming from? Yeah.
That makes sense. Yes.
Okay.
Chris, I have a question. This is Roger. Are you there?
Go ahead, Roger.
Yeah. The question before where we had the possibility of scoring 9 points on one section. I feel like there are some nonprofits that go into that scoring system 6 points in the hole because, for example, I don't believe we put that many beds in heads or heads in beds. And I think that puts us at a distinct disadvantage. And when you're finally doing the scoring, I'm walking in there already having lost 6 points. And I don't think that's a level playing field. And it's like you're saying it's much more important to put somebody in a bed than it is to embrace the cultural well-being of the city. That's how I take that. Do I have a comment?
I think you're right. There is a preference in the goals for meeting all three of them. And certainly the reader is going to score it sympathetically. So if you're doing this awesome thing otherwise and you're getting all your points in the other sections, it's not the end of the world that you're not putting heads and beds. But perhaps it's a way for you guys to think about it is, what would we need to do for our project in order to draw in more people? What is the tourist impact that we could describe? And it's, it's a grant. So you're just describing your plan. This is what we think will happen. This is our goal. Here's what we're going to do. And the reader is going to look at, is that something reasonable? So if you say, oh, we're going to bring in 1 million people, we're probably not going to believe you. But if you say, we're going to do a partnership with these 3 hotels to do a family craft weekend where they come to our facility for one afternoon and they go here for another afternoon, and we think that's going to increase taxes, the reader's going to say, oh, that's excellent, because you're both providing a cultural event and you're bringing in people.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other operators that had questions regarding the grant process?
Oh, hi, Scott. It's Kathleen Fish here from
Kathleen.
Rocky.
Yes.
I just had a quick question, not to flog question number 2 under funding goals, but would you guys be obligated to reword that question as it appears on the application? Because it says you must check at least one, which by its just the way it's written implies that you don't need to check all 3, which could lead some organizations, could lull them into a false sense of security given this new scoring rubric? Or am I just overreading it? Entirely possible.
Maybe check all that apply instead of check at least one.
Yeah, that sounds better.
It just seems a little bit late in the game for this one, I guess, or
Yeah.
or maybe they didn't have the opportunity to check the actual questions as they were written against the scoring requirements that the board was looking at. I just think that it's a little unfortunate that those two things don't match each other.
So do you think if we change the reading to, or the question to check all that apply, would that solve the problem? Or do you think we need to say you get extra points if you answer more than one? Like how exactly do you want it to be?
I do not know the magic fairy dust for wording this, but
Yeah, are we still in draft about this application?
No, it's out.
It's out. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the only thing.
Yeah,
Is like,
I thought. I need to think about this one. You guys, I didn't realize this question was worded this way. Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Chris,
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario, we can just send out a clarification email to people and just say like, hey, just to reiterate, this is our intention with this question.
And this application is only the 9 partners, correct, Chris?
10 partners.
10, sorry, 10, yes, sorry.
Well, and I think we use the same idea for the whole matrix of you get points the more things you cover. And I think, Chris, in your training, you did review the matrix. Is that right? The scoring matrix?
I don't think so.
Oh.
I think he pointed it out to us and said that it's there. I mean, it's been helpful. Yeah. I'm holding it next to me as I'm writing the grant. And that was how I realized that was, when I was on the board, we actually made that question. We actually said that question is one or more. You didn't have to have all 3. You only, so that was why I was surprised to see that now it says we have to have all 3.
You don't have to have all 3.
Well,
you get more points.
But we do.
Yeah, but we kind of do because we're competing against each other. And if I get 9 points and Roger only gets 3, like he says, he's going into it behind me already. And so I offer a much different program than what Roger offers, but I can see where he's coming from. He does meet. I mean, and I think Laura, you were involved in this conversation too, where we were talking about all 3 of the goals hold the same weight. And if an organization only meets 1 goal, that's just as impressive as if they meet all 3, I believe. But again, I mean, at this point, it's too late in the game. We have to go with what you guys have done. So that's just a little bit of the background about where that's coming from. Maybe we can look at it next year again.
Or give us more space next year to fill it out so we can get
Yeah, because I would love, or can you write grants? I'd love for you to try to squeeze all of those and the rubric that you gave us. Wow. I mean, it's like an entire full page with all the, did you answer all these questions? And yeah, it's not easy. Trust me.
It's not, unless you let us use a 6-point font.
So,
Yeah.
is it a space issue? Like, I think we can fix the space issue pretty easily.
With this question, it's a space issue, I think.
Yes, it is a space issue. I have Denise talking about this quite often. That the amount of space allocated is really challenging to give a good answer. Yeah.
Right, and we did not review that at all in this last revisions. Chris, is there a word limit or a character limit? What's the defining problem?
It's a character limit, Galen. The box is only so big. The box is like.
Chris, you're on mute. He answered them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, so where I was going with this is that, and I think where the facility operators were looking at is that each one of the first question on the application compared to the scoring rubric. The scoring rubric identifies the 3 goals that the board has, and you get 3 points for each one of those goals being met. It doesn't address any points for the other parts of the CTP goal, funding goal on the application. So for example, you have right here, most of the organizations, facility operators should be able to meet the quality of life question. They should be able to meet how they impact the economy and tourism piece of it. So there's 6 points out of the 9. Whether or not they impact or directly impact room nights, that's going to be questionable. But at the same time, if you're a major facility operator and you have a major event that you put on or are part of, you're bringing people in. You may not be able to quantify that necessarily, but you can at least address it, that maybe one of your big events that you hold has the potential to bring room nights in.
Right.
And if you're getting zip codes, I think the rule is if it's over 50 miles,
Correct.
there's some possibility that somebody stayed in a hotel someplace,
Right.
Yep.
But Chris, I think the concern they had was that they were limited. They couldn't explain all the points because they're character limited.
So on the application, here's the application. Here is where they are limited to addressing those 3 criteria.
Mm-hmm.
They are limited to this space for doing that.
How many characters is that?
I don't have
Or
information.
how hard is
Depends
it
on the width of the characters in your narrative too, I think. W's take more space than I's.
Yeah.
How hard is that to make that bigger? Like, I don't want that to hold up people being able to really respond. If they
Right.
can't respond to 3 things is that 500 words? Is that 200 words? Like, what's the?
I have no idea what the number is.
Would it be hard to make that bigger?
Well, I can take a look I can show you an example of, last year's application that has that filled in. Just so that way you can see that. But where I was going with that is all 9 of the points for this section is addressed here. And we're not addressing points for their outcomes, 1 and 2, or for how they describe their partnership with other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
You mean there's no points for those ones?
Correct. On the scoring rubric, we're not giving points for C, B. So that's why I think they're saying, hey,
Mm-hmm.
all the points for this section is tied up in these 3 identification pieces.
Are the outcomes supposed to confirm what they've said in part A? So the outcomes would be, we bring in 50 people.
So the outcomes would be what they identify, what their goals are for what they do.
And they're supposed to be the CTPAB funding goals. So that's just proof of meeting the goals above.
But and this is how they prove that. This is how they measure and track their performance, because then on the report form, they have to report how their outcomes came out, how did those numbers come out based on their original assumptions.
Right. So for the people writing the grants, how many words do you need? How many characters do you need for that section?
So Galen, I just counted my application from last year. It was 282 words in that entire section. So 1,800 characters.
What would be better?
Double.
Yeah, double.
So if you got 500 words or 3,600 characters?
Yeah, I mean, I think double would be reasonable. But again, I think at this point it's too late in the game. But again, next year, I think it's worth looking at. Because I applaud your criteria that you're looking at, the rubric. It's helping me to write this grant because I know that you guys, I know what you're going to be looking for. But the detail that you're looking for in that question in particular is really intense. I mean, I'm not sure how we're going to do that in that space. I'm trying to squeeze it all in there, but it's just, I mean, provide strong evidence that you're accessible to diverse populations. What is strong evidence? I mean, and that's just one of the 3. I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, I'm kind of nitpicking now, but it's something to look at for next year.
And do you feel like it's too late to send out a thing saying, hey, we've opened the character count up so you can put more stuff in?
I do. I mean, it's Tuesday and the grants are due on Monday. And I wish I had read all of this more closely, but you know, Our Lady of Procrastinators is probably my patron saint.
You got 6 days left. Come on.
Come on, I know, right? I mean, that's like hours.
So in this one that Chris has just put up, 2 of those boxes have been checked, and you can see that there must be really crisp answers to only be using 6, 7, 8 lines.
Yeah, it's a paragraph each.
Paragraph each, and that's rare if you've got a lot of information to relay and a lot of dense activity going on, which is what you want to hear, because obviously more is better. And that's only 2, and you've got hardly any room left if you were checking all 3, and you want all 3. You've made it clear all 3 is good, or 3 is better than 2, and 2 is better than 1. Is what we're hearing. So I really do think you could perhaps let people add an extra page if they want to in the meantime. And then I know, Chris, it's a technical issue and you obviously got to work with somebody to fix that. But this has been long-standing complaint about not, the crucial questions, really not having enough space to answer them well.
Right. And that's that old adage about, sorry, I wasn't brief. I didn't have enough time.
Yes, yeah. But thank you for taking that on, Galen. I appreciate your comments on that.
So I think we can make note of it for next year. I don't know, Chris, what ability you have to get the word out. Certainly, if people can't fit it in those lines and they have something crucial to say about any of those 3 goals, I'd want to capture that. I don't know if we can allow an appendix, any additional information.
Yeah, Chris, could we just have people send us a Word doc if they have more writing than what the space allows?
Excuse me, I just want to pipe up here. I think if you're going to do that, you need to set a limit for all of us, because some of us might do a whole lot. Some of us might just write a couple of sentences, and that could also have an impact. So if you guys want to do that, that's great, but please set a consistent limit for all of us to follow.
Right. That's excellent. It'll be nice for you to do it, and I agree with Kathleen. Give us a word count.
You did. You didn't like it.
And I think our partners brought up a valid point, or Chris maybe brought it up, that B and C have no weight, and perhaps in that 9 points, those should have, or 3 points per funding goal should have some weight in the outcomes and the measurements. So,
and Scott, I would just an aside is that the outcomes are just to prove what you've said in A. So how are you going to measure it? They're kind of backup to show, like if I say I'm going to increase hotel guests by 1 million people, I want to know like what my method is of counting that and what my goal is to prove it. So I think it would give you points or take away points if you make an outlandish claim and have a good.
And I think as an evaluator, I do take all that together with, they could say they're going to do 1 million guest rooms, and that's great, but if there's not a path to follow to get to 100 or 1 million, it's probably not going to carry water.
Right.
All right. Great comment. Great dialogue. I definitely, this is something that I missed those first few months where we didn't get the feedback like a normal board meeting with the audience being able to ask questions. So, or us to ask questions of the audience. So any other comments from any of the other operators? It does sound like those are consistent concerns, and so that adds even more validity.
So can I just ask Scott then, what is the conclusion? Do we get to add to 500 words? What's the conclusion?
Chris, has anybody submitted theirs already? I mean, again, that might not be fair for this year.
I would say keep it the same, live within that context that you have that's on there, and then we'll go ahead and
Abbreviate.
we'll adjust next year's application to include more room for text. Right now, it looks like it's about 300 characters. The SAA application here had 292 words on it, and it's fully utilizing everything on it. Application that they've used. I'd say for this year, keep it the same. Everyone's in the same boat, same restriction, and then change it for next year.
And Chris, I just have a question for you.
Yep.
With that, so are we able to keep that in mind while we're scoring these applications?
Yeah. You
kind of adjust internally ourselves?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a great question, Felipe, because each of us, as long as we're being consistent for all of the applications as evaluators, we're giving everybody the same fair shot. It is, if we're using a prejudice or whatever, then that's not fair. And so it's a valid, if you're taking into consideration for one, you owe it to all the others to take it into consideration. And I'm telling you something you already know, but it's just, that's our obligation as board members. This is the evaluation is the single most important thing we do all year for helping our community be as vibrant and a place to come as anything we do. So,
perfect.
All right. So with no other questions regarding the grant application, if we can move
Sally has her hand raised.
Oh,
Scott,
ahead.
I just
Sorry.
have a brief question. Chris, could you show the budget portion of the facilitator grant?
Sure. Well, only through the magic of a virtual meeting. Let's see. All right, so here is the application and the section. There's been questions about what fiscal year to put in here, is what I've been hearing. So this is based on each individual organization's fiscal year. It doesn't have to fit the city's fiscal year, so it doesn't have to be July 1st to June 30th. This is for the most recently completed fiscal year, whatever your organization's fiscal year is. I know there are some out there that run from October 1st to September 30th. I know some of them that run from January 1st to December 31st. And then there are some that do run on the city's same fiscal year going July 1st to June 30th. It's whatever your organization's time frame is.
Okay.
And
Could
so
you scroll down to the expenses for me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Let's see, total capital. Okay. I must have an old copy because there was an extra word that was causing me confusion that I don't see in here now. So I think I'm okay. Thank you.
all right.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it's.
Is it on a different application?
No. Is this the bottom? Is it?
Oh, this one down here?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
So I have a question.
Yes, Roger.
When if you go back down here a little ways and you're saying the most recently completed fiscal year,
Yeah.
then if we're running from January 1 to December, then the only figures I would be putting in here, if they're the completed ones, would be for 2019.
Correct.
Would not include anything from 2020.
Correct.
That would be your current budget.
Yes.
Yep.
So we'd put our current budget over here.
Yeah, you have your most recently completed is in that first column, and the next one where it says current budget, that's where your current one. So if you run 2019 and then 2020.
Okay. Thank you. That explains it.
And that's the current budget is where you think you will end the current fiscal year, correct?
No, it's a budget. So it's whatever you guys put together as your budget for the year. If
Okay. For the whole year.
for
Yeah.
the whole year, yeah.
Okay.
And then if you built a budget for your upcoming year, then that would go in here.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Okay, Chris, if you would be so kind as to take us through the cultural fund reports.
Sure. Do you want the funding stuff too?
Yes, yes.
Pull this up.
Is that page 6A? Yeah.
6A, correct. So here we are. We got through the month of September. We're now in October, looking at what came through revenue-wise for the fund. We came in at $775,000, almost $776,000 worth of TOT revenues. As we've talked briefly earlier, the majority of that is related to the it's all for September activities that are paid in October. And those September activities included the fire, where people were displaced from their homes and staying in the local hotels and motels. And as long as it's less than a 30-day stay, those funds will remain here. If they stayed longer than 30 days, then they're not entitled to have to pay that tax. And so then the hotels will then adjust their payment for the October activity going into that we collect in November, which is the next time we receive more funding. So we can see that it's about 44% less than where we were at the same time last year. So it's $626,000 less. Everything else is tracking fairly similar. The beginning fund balance was obviously lower because we ate through a lot of that when COVID started for the last quarter of 2019-20. Expenditures are down as well because we've made adjustments trying to cash flow everything and make sure we have enough cash on hand. Obviously, with the Travel Salem tourism promotion side of things, it's about $100,000 less, $120,000 less, or 8% less as a percentage, but really $120,000 less on a year-over-year basis. Same thing in the parks programs and stuff. We've cut those down a little, and admin. So we're just making it by. We still do have cash on hand, so that's good. We are going to be using all of that most likely, or the plan is to spend that before we have to make any other adjustments elsewhere. Here's how it looks on a monthly basis. 58, almost 59% less, 55% less. And then our September activities with the fires really helped boost that up. It was unexpected, really. So I'll be interested to see how November plays out. So then going into the reports that we have quarterly reports from the facility operators. First one here is the Bush House Museum. Hopefully you guys have read through these at home.
I wanted to say that I really appreciate seeing what they're doing while they're not accepting guests, especially Bush House. Like, here's how we're working to make us better once we reopen. I thought that was pretty impressive, the collaboration to tell the untold stories. I thought that was certainly worth their time and a good example of that pivot and what to do if you can't have guests in the facility.
Yep. Then we have the Salem Multicultural Institute. And then the Willamette Heritage Center. I had said it earlier, but I'd missed it on the last the October meeting.
I have a follow-up on the Heritage Center. Last month, we clarified that they could still do their their capital project. Is that
Right.
underway, Michelle?
I'm really hesitant to start that project because I'm under the impression that because we have to put the money out front first and then submit receipts. And I'm afraid if we put the money out first and then submit the receipts, that the top board will say you don't have the money. So I'm cautious about doing that because it could be another 3 or 4 months before we finish. And it's looking to me like there's not going to be money there. So, yeah, I mean, I understand how it's playing out. And so I'm not so sure we're going to do it because it's like gambling. It's like, throwing my money out there and hoping that it'll be available. I'm just not sure if we don't have any money to gamble with right now. So I'm not sure we're going to do it.
So that's what I was asking Chris about the encumbrance. Usually, and maybe the city doesn't work this way or the top board doesn't work this way. Usually you see an encumbrance budget with here's what we've got and here's what we've already promised to people. Do we have an idea what that number's like?
For my specific project, you mean? How?
Yeah, I just want to see so we have $372,000. What is our promised outlay for this year?
Actually, and Galen, now that you bring that up, I was actually going to suggest that you guys consider that because all of us are doing scenario budgeting. And I think it might be worth your time as a board to look at everything that's still out, what projects are still potentially going to happen, and maybe say, this is how many, this is how, if everybody does their projects from here till now, this is how much it's going to cost, right? And make that, it would provide, I think, the opportunity for us as recipients of grants to have a little bit more consistency. Because I think that's the underlying theme here. We're looking for consistency. And if you guys all looked at the number of projects that were still outstanding for the rest of the year and looked at how much money you had left, you could say, yes, we're going to fund them all, or no, we can't fund them all, or we're going to fund a percentage of them or something like that. And then we'll know whether or not we should move forward.
Right.
Because what worries me is that if you guys are going to be granting events that are happening in the next 2 months, and then someone happens to have an event in May, then what happens to their event? They lose out because they didn't have their event soon enough. It's kind of like my capital expenditure. I'm not going to have the receipts for you guys until probably April. So I'm glad for the Elsinore that they're getting some funds, but they're lucky because they're able to just go to the store and buy what they need. For us, we have to create an exhibit, and that takes a lot of time.
So Chris, it looks like you were circling that 573. That's our total grants we made for the year?
Yes.
And
that's the encumbrance.
Okay. So for next meeting, maybe an outline of how much of that is capital projects, how much of that is quarterly payments, how much of it are events that are still
may or may not happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then that way we can, because we're going to have to we're going to have to make decisions. Do we prioritize, quarterly payments to the cultural operators and not do events, or vice versa? So that would be good to have that broken down.
Well, I think, Galen, you also have to keep in consideration the city parks and CIP.
Yeah, and we don't
encumbrance. I mean, it's more than just grants.
Right.
That is
correct.
Do we have control over that though?
No.
Right. So just the things we have control over.
But I think you still have to take it into consideration. Otherwise, you are gambling, as Michelle said. So.
Right, and you're still dependent upon revenues coming in to cover whatever's being spent. Yeah, because we don't think that the revenues will come in at the 3.1 million originally we're anticipating when we made the adjustments. If we're still only going to receive 50% of TOT funding on a monthly basis going forward, I mean, that, you know, that puts it way down. You know, it's just such a huge unknown, because everything that's been budgeted fully spends whatever revenues were originally anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
We're having to make adjustments on the fly if the revenues don't come in high enough to cover what, because it's fully, everything's been fully booked or encumbered. And it may be that we don't have the revenues to come in to pay everything that was encumbered.
I mean, you know, this might not be, I mean, okay, I'm going to speak for myself. I'm not speaking for my colleagues, but personally, if you guys don't have the money, I would be fine with hearing that, if that's the answer. I'd rather hear that than have someone say, well, maybe we'll have to see, let us know, what do you think? You know, to me, it looks like you don't have the money. Personally, I mean, I don't know where this money is going to come from. And me personally, Willamette Heritage Center, I would rather hear you say, at least for the events and capital expenditures, not for the quarterly facility operator payments, because I think
that's the most important.
Yeah, and can I add there too, is that, yeah, I think the facilities operating to just keep our things going is actually the most crucial thing.
I agree. And I think to put events of, you know, a random person who, you know, wants to throw an event and then make us not have our quarterly payments, I think that would be worse. But that's just me. I'm not speaking for my colleagues.
And remember that the events right now, they have to be in person. They're not virtual events. So, and a reimbursement as well. So they have to take place. If they take place, they get canceled, then there's no funding.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to chime in again on supporting the quarterly payments, because without those quarterly payments, that will have an impact on the ability to plan events that do bring beds to heads or heads to beds in Salem. And also just another thing to point out is that all of us are operating on extremely reduced staffs. So I hear a lot of really great ideas from the top board. I'm like, oh yeah, that'd be fun. That would be fun. But we're 1.25, and I have to do everything from HR to financials to marketing to grant writing to event planning, and it's a little tough this year. And you know, I just would hope that you guys would all keep that in mind as you're reviewing the grants. The incredible stress that every single one of us has been under since March, with having to constantly reinvent ourselves and do things on the fly with extraordinarily limited budgets. And also, we're also experiencing the same stressors as everybody else, you know, having to take care of kids at home with school, you know, family members who are sick, fighting for bandwidth in our healths when we were working at home. So if you guys could just kind of maybe like be a little kind in that respect. It's just been a tough year for everybody. And I think we're all on the same page with wanting to bring people to Salem and help people who don't live here to see what an amazing city this is, and to all contribute to making it a better city and a more welcoming city. Anyhow, that's it. I'll shut up.
All right.
And I want you to know that when we were reviewing this, we had long conversations about that, about like, what can we reasonably expect from people this year? Because nobody knows what's going to happen. Nobody, even a year from now, nobody really knows what the physical environment's going to be looking like. So I think everybody's very primed to be sympathetic and just looking for, you know, whatever you have, bring it.
Yep.
All right. Thank you, Galen.
Yeah, and all the studies, you know, are that, well, and I can attest to it, because in 2008 with the recession, we were still, you know, when people, you know, were able to start traveling again, it was California, Idaho, Washington, and Oregonians that were the first to come back. They are the most resilient. That's the easiest market to drive to Salem. And when things start coming back, that will fill the vacuum relatively quickly. And that's where Travel Salem is spending the bulk of their money, is that convenience zone market. to get people here quickly. I think everybody may have had a chance to read the statistics that Irene shared from their studies that generally people want to travel. They're more comfortable driving than they are flying, and they want to do things outdoors. Even with the fires, there's still a ton of stuff outdoors in Oregon, in the Willamette Valley that they can be doing. Obviously, these events that you're talking about, majority of those are outdoor events. So it's not all doom and gloom. There is optimism. It just needs to have the switch flipped. So.
Okay. And so the last item of business or information was related to the Willamette Master Course's letter stating that their event has been canceled.
And were they going to be at the Smith Auditorium at Willamette? Is that accurate, or?
That's normally where they.
Yeah. Okay. And unfortunately, obviously, it's all group size and things like that. So.
Yep.
All right. So if we can go ahead and move to appearance of interested citizens, and Chris, I'm going to leave it to your capable hands to make sure everybody gets called upon.
I'm going to start from the top of my list, and the first one I'll come across is Sally from the Elsinore.
Okay, it's been a tough week under our roof on High Street since the governor's announcement last week. We had a live event planned for the 16th, and we've had to postpone that until January. And we were really excited to open our doors for family movies the week before Thanksgiving and through December. And that is likely not going to happen now. So, it's been herky jerky, switch gears, punt. That's what's going on. But we, about 10 days ago, had 5 different sessions of volunteer training for our different teams. There were a few people who were comfortable coming in for that in person, and we're really happy to see their counterparts and get out of their houses. Other people were able to join via Zoom. But we felt like it was really important to get them up to speed on our new guidelines and rules for when we do have people come back. What's the flow going to be through the lobby? How are we going to seat? All that. So we've got that done, and we've got PPE purchased and ready to go. We've got acrylic screens to go in front of concessions and hand washing stations, and so just waiting for the green light and some higher capacity ability.
Cool, thank you. Sandra Bernard from Salem Art Association is next on the list.
Thank you, Chris. So it's incredibly intense at the moment. As you know, I'm leaving at the end of December. So trying to get things wrapped up and tidied and all nice and ready for transition. The poster's out, and we had, I think, 78 or something applications, and we've started our search committees met, and we're in process. We don't think we'll have anybody in place by January, and it's a little challenging. How are we going to move the organization? How are we going to keep things ticking over? But anyway, lots of discussions about that. Otherwise, in the building, in the annex, our programming has the director of our community arts education program is very innovative and has come up with a series of things for the public to see in the annex. It's what we call our walking tour. So you can walk around the building. And in the annex, the current project that's going on, we've had different artists. I mean, we're there to serve artists as well. The community arts education program is specifically that. And so there've been artists that have occupied the arts in residence studio, one at a time, 3 days gap between them, and so on. So accommodating all of the restrictions. What we're doing now in the actual annex part of the artist in residence studio at the side is that there's a project at the moment going on called the Elaborate Body. And it's after the concept of the exquisite corpse that was a kind of surrealist project where they will have an artist come in and paint part of a body, paste it over, and someone comes and does the other part of the body, paste over, and they continue. And then at the end, you unveil it, what the body looks like. So there's a number of artists. I think there's about 15 artists enrolled for this. So one at a time, they come into the space and they use it as their studio for a day or two, or however long. And then this whole thing is going to be going on through the next few months, however long it takes until we can formally open and have a normal, regular opening with the public coming in and all the good stuff that happens at our Fine Art Friday openings. And then all of these elaborate bodies, then and now called, will be unveiled. So it's a great project, and it's giving the artists something to be excited about because they're interacting with each other in a way. So that's continuous. I think I talked last time about the schools projects, the education, the videos that have been made to support teaching artists to help artists integrate art into teachers to integrate art into their curriculum and so on. So there's a lot going on in the education piece. The galleries is a little more challenging because that depends on a good flow of people coming through and openings and all that interaction that goes in around an artist exhibition. So that has been the most challenging area to somehow sustain something. We did some videos, but it's been very hard. So at this point, we have our 2 gallery coordinators back on staff on a reduced hours, but still back. And we've just been putting together the online marketplace. The first time we would have had an online marketplace, and it should be launched probably next week. They're just doing the final pieces. And so artists have been reached, they've been coming in, we've been contracts written for different kinds of contracts and policies written all around an online marketplace. And it's on Shopify, I think is the platform's being used. So that's what's happening for the galleries. Our gallery guides want to start doing some small, very limited exhibitions that they want to run themselves. They are a high-risk group, of course, because age-wise, they're a high-risk group. So I have my concerns about that, but we'll help make things happen for them because they've lost their social network through this lockdown. And Salem, their activities, Salem Art Association, is really important for them. There's so many impacts. And so we're sort of balancing health risk versus these folks really need to get together, need to be doing something in the community. And in events, really good news. I'm sure you all know there was HR issues going on earlier in the spring that all resolved. And now, in fact, our events director, Stephanie Patterson, has returned back on staff as our events director. So we are really thrilled to have her back, and everyone on the staff is really pleased to have her back in the SAA family. So she's already started on. We're doing a virtual clay ball art fair. We're anticipating being in person and back to usual. So that's that, and I think that's probably enough for now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Felipe, you have a question? You have your hand raised? Okay.
No, I'm good. That was a while ago.
Okay. Next on the list was Alicia Bay from Gilbert House.
So at Gilbert House, we're busy pivoting our programs. We offer now Gilly's creative boxes, or Gilly's boxes of creative play, a subscription box series with children that can receive either preschool or elementary activity kits that have 2 STEM activities, a movement activity, Zoom classes with our educators, an original play, and literacy activity in those. And so those are selling right now on our website. We're also able to partner with Salem Health to get 50 of those to CASA of Marion County last week. And we'll be working with the West Valley Hospital to get 50 more boxes over to the CASA of Polk County. And 11 boxes went to St. Francis Shelter from a donor this last week. So I'm trying to work with our donors in that capacity to get these kits to kids in their homes. We are now offering, you can essentially rent an exhibit. So we have Gilly on the Go, where our members can check out their favorite parts of the exhibit. We hosted a Halloween re-engineered event. We tried to keep it low key, but over 1,000 people came. So, which was a good problem to have. But we worked with construction partners and other volunteers to build mechanisms to deliver candy to children from socially distant area. So there was an erector set, there was a eyeball roll from top of one of the buildings, there was this ghost zip line, and we used the perimeter of the museum to hand out candy, which was really fun, and really fun to see families near the museum for that event. We are preparing for a New Year's Eve event. Every year we do a large balloon drop at the museum. This year we'll be inviting families to join us on a Zoom call to do balloon drops in their own homes. So looking forward to engaging families and building community that way, and really appreciate the TOT funding and the operating grant, which is really sustaining Gilbert House during this transition, and a big help for us to be able to continue to meet the needs of our community.
Thanks, Alicia. Next on my list is Irene Bernards from Travel Salem.
There we go. Hi, everyone. I'll make it quick. I just want you all to know that I did send out a toolkit after the last TOT meeting. If you have any problem opening that, please email me and let me know. It's absolutely huge file. And so I had to work with Yvonne to get her access to that. But anyways, just let me know if you have any problem opening that.
Thank you. Next on my list is from Salem Multicultural Institute.
Sorry about that. I had an uncooperative iPad. We've been busy over the past few weeks. We are working with the Salem Main Street Association. They are trying to make their downtown holiday light displays have more of a multicultural flair this year. So we're working with them on putting up some displays at Salem Center and at any other businesses downtown who would like one. That's been a lot of fun. We also started to participate in the First Friday Art Walks this month. Our gallery is open to very limited visitors, which has worked out pretty well for us. We had 11 people come through on Friday night. So 4 of them were on the art walk, but 7 of them came to see author Fata Aru Levy, who is from Samoa, and he is a chief, and he just wrote a book about navigation and the history of the people of Samoa, based in linguistics, archaeology, DNA, and other scientific disciplines. He'll be back again on December 16th to do some work. Working on a small Diwali virtual presentation in conjunction with Indus, And we are also working on getting a Russian band called Otava to do a virtual concert for us. They are from St. Petersburg and they're amazing. My goal is to get them here to Salem for a World Beat Festival sometime whenever, borders open and there's no more coronavirus. I think that's about it. Just our little staff is plugging along. There are no more spiders in our gallery, so we can't count them as visitors anymore. And I think that's about all I can say now. Oh, we just had our fundraiser, the World Beat Bat. It was virtual, and it did better than I thought it would do, which wasn't as good as a real live in life one. But I really appreciated everybody who participated in that. And then again, to echo Alicia, we really do appreciate the operational funding. It's been a godsend to us this year. And that's it.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next on my list is Michelle Cordova from
Hi
Lemon
again.
Heritage Center.
Hi again. I don't have a lot to update, but we also, just like at Gilbert House, we had a great Halloween event on the 31st. It was fabulous, perfect, beautiful day. We had people waiting. It was a drive-through trick-or-treating. We had about 25 booths. We had a 6-foot poles that handed out candy to the kids. People waited an hour and a half in line, apparently, but nobody complained. Everyone was just so happy to be able to do something. Everyone was dressed up. It was a blast. We had a wonderful, wonderful time. We're still debating whether or not to do magic. We might. We're on the fence on that one. It would be very modified and very different if we do. We're going to decide next week. And I also just got a text from Yvonne from Deepwood. She wanted to apologize. She couldn't get into the Zoom meeting for some reason. She's watching on YouTube though. And she said she didn't have any updates from Deepwood other than they're just plugging along and they're waiting to be able to reopen. Mom. So that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Next on the list is Roger Williams from Willamette Art Center.
Oh, thank you. What we have coming up is our empty bowl sale, which is going to be the first weekend before Thanksgiving. We had intended to move our sale from our facility to the Columbia Hall on the Oregon State Fair, where we had hoped to be able to have up to 100 people in a 30,000 square foot arena for our sale, but that got cut down to 50 people at a time, including staff. But we're going to go ahead and still have it anyway. We just concluded our last sale at the Saturday market. We had attempted to join Saturday market this summer and sell right there at the market. We were not allowed to participate with them, something to do with their bylaws. So we leased the apartment or the parking lot directly across the street from Salem Market, Saturday Market, and we held our sale there. And we were very successful. The 5 times we were open, we raised over $13,000. So we feel very fortunate in our ability to be able to do that. We also had a garage sale where our patrons brought in everything from robo vacuum cleaners to furniture, and we raised an additional $4,100 with that sale. So we did very well with those 2 fundraisers. So other than that, we've had to close our Family Clay Sunday. We had attempted to do that online, and it just dwindled down to where there were only 2 or 3 families at a time, and we were running them out of Silverton, Oregon, as well as here in Salem. Unfortunately, that just didn't work, but we're looking for other ways to raise money, and we'll keep doing that. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Roger. I think I made it through everybody. Anybody I missed, please speak up. Doesn't look like it.
All right. Well, thank you for everybody attending. Before we close the meeting, is there any other business or parking lot items that the board would like to put on future agendas? Okay. Hearing none. Just a reminder, we do not have a December meeting so that Chris and Kelly can be getting everything organized on the applications for us to start reviewing in January, right?
Actually, we do have the December. Normally, we have the December meeting, and you just get the facility operators and their capital improvement grants.
Okay. Oh, well, very good. We don't get a month off for Christmas, but so we will plan on what is the meeting
December
in December?
8th.
December 8th. Okay. So we'll get to work, Chris.
Yeah, thanks.
But again, thank you for the transparency tonight and just really being open. You know, I applaud everybody's efforts, and we will get through this together. So, so we are adjourned. Thank you very much.
You have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you all.